All right, summer's just around the corner, so it's time to get your yard and your garden ready.
Yes, so we brought in the expert, Caron from Utah State University Extension, to give us some tips. You brought some really pretty flowers along.
I brought some fun stuff. So as we get into the warmer weather, I thought it'd be fun to bring some flowers that tend to like the warmer weather as we get into that period. We've got, of course, the traditional petunias and geraniums, the annuals that, you have to replace in the fall or for next spring because they don't overwinter.
I'm a huge petunia planter, but toward the end of the season, my petunias get kind of tangled and leggy. Can I prevent that from happening?
So the way to prevent that from happening is to not be scared of pruning them back.
Really?
So they actually tolerate shearing really well, and you can see even with this plant here that there's not a lot of flowers in the middle. And so the way to get those flowers in the middle is to actually prune the branches back about halfway, and that'll stimulate new buds to develop closer to the center.
Pretty quickly because you need to pull off all the,
You got to deadhead them.
It is kind of sad. You can deadhead them, but it takes about 2 weeks.
Okay. So. Wow, I would never have guessed to cut those. I would think I would have damaged them.
No, it's actually
good to know.
Really encouraging to them.
What are some others that you recommend?
So we've got some stone crop here that loves the heat. It's a succulent, so those hot south or west sides of the house. We've got a plant called ice plant here, which actually loves the heat, strangely enough. It's an interesting name, but it's because it kind of has leaves that sparkle in the sun that look like little ice crystals on it.
And it blooms, it looks like.
It does bloom. It actually, the flowers close up at night, and it's not quite bright enough in here yet to think that it's daytime.
Oh, okay.
So, but it has beautiful, there's blues and oranges and reds of those.
Pretty.
And then we have a plant called pincushion flower, which also loves the heat. And these three here, these larger ones, are actually perennials, so they'll actually overwinter and they'll get bigger every year.
Nice, I love perennials.
Yeah, they're a fun way to go. They only bloom for a couple of weeks, and the annuals will bloom all season, so that's the trade-off.
Oh, that's the trade-off.
That's the trade-off.
Okay,
yeah.
You get a little bit of ease with not having to replant them, but okay.
But they don't bloom as long.
All right, I'm guessing you brought, is this grass, and you brought it in for a reason to talk about?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the questions I get a lot this time of year is how often do I have to water my lawn, and how tall should I cut it so that it both looks good but is also healthy. And we actually recommend cutting it at about 2.5 inches high, 2 to 3 inches high, which is higher than most people really want to do it. But I actually prepared this. I put a golf ball in there, since a lot of people know what a golf ball looks like on the grass, right? And that's about 2.5 inches compared to a golf ball.
Okay.
So
why do you wait for it to be that tall?
Well, one of the big trade-offs with cutting it short, or the correlations between leaves, which is what the grass is, and the roots, is the longer the leaves are, the deeper the roots can be, because there's more food to support the roots. And the leaves also shade the soil a little bit better when it's taller, and that actually causes it to be cooler, and then we get less evaporation. So it actually is a way of conserving water by mowing the lawn a little bit taller.
Good little trick.
Yeah.
Michael, are you in favor of when you do cut the grass, leaving the clippings behind, or bagging them and throwing them out?
It depends. I actually gather mine, and I use them as mulch in my garden. So around the plants to help keep the weeds down and things, so I like it that way. Mulching actually works really well, which is just allowing the grass clippings to drop back in to the lawn. As long as you can mow it frequently, you'll have to mow it more frequently.
Otherwise you'll get big clumps.
Yeah, otherwise
of
it clumps up a lot. So typically you have to mow it only about 1/2 inch at a time, or it will kind of clump up.
Okay. And this time of year you've got to be doing it almost every other day.
Especially with the rain and things that we've had. So.
Yeah. Okay, and I think we've kind of disguised the summer yard segment really for what it is. It's an intervention with my tomato plant growing.
Oh, yeah. They warned me that you were going to ask me about
I am the tomato killer, yes, but I'm trying again, and I'm just wondering with planting, just give me some basics that really kind of ensure that you're going to at least get a few red tomatoes.
Yeah, so when looking for good tomatoes to plant, you actually want plants that are a little bit smaller and probably not flowering yet if you can find them.
Okay.
And then tomatoes can also be buried deeply, so you can bury them up closer to the top and take off the lower leaves, and that will encourage better rooting along the stem.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So if they're a little tall, a little bit leggy, because they've been hanging out waiting to be planted, they can go in the ground still. And then one of the things that is really helpful for tomatoes is they need some fertilizer, but not a lot. So if you over-fertilize, they'll grow like crazy. But then you actually won't get very much fruit. It's a trade-off. It'll stimulate a lot of leaves.
I think that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
That sounds exactly like what happened last
So
year.
let them be a little lean. and they'll probably flower and fruit pretty good for you. They also like the soil moisture to be fairly even. So letting the soil get really wet and then really dry, that encourages more fruit cracking and a disease probably called blossom end rot.
Okay.
So,
Carrie, you usually plant them in pots. Do you prefer pots to the ground?
I prefer the ground for tomatoes unless they're really small tomatoes in really large pots. They like to have a nice, like I said, a nice even moisture base, and that's hard to provide in pots.
All right, you're going to have to come back, but I love this, that we could do a whole segment on tomatoes. Very, very helpful. Good summer gardening tips.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you want more Michael Caron, contact him through Utah State Extension.
Garden.usu.edu.
Awesome.